Hey guys, what's going on? This is going to be another mailbag video, but it's not going to be in the standard line of mailbags that I normally make. It's not even going to be in the standard line of mailbags that I've already prepared for 2025. So we're going to go ahead and get into it. Been getting a lot of mail lately asking me what's going on with my social existence, and normally I would just kind of ignore this a fair bit. But when you start getting tons and tons of mail about it, which is kind of weird because I don't exactly have a very large following, you kind of have to answer it past a certain point, and it would just be easier to make the video instead of just going and, well, individually answering each and every single email that I get in detail. So I'm going to go ahead and explain this to the best of my ability, and we can pretty much go from there. So for a while, I've been kind of just sitting down and saying to myself, okay, I've been needing to go and just clean up my social existence. I had done a pretty good job cleaning out people that I didn't really know, and I felt that past a certain point, I needed to look at the original group that I was running with at the time, and I need to weed out the various issues with it. And so this had started about, I want to say about 3 years ago. I had an old ex-friend that had popped back into my life, and they had sworn that they had changed and everything else, so I had given it the benefit of the doubt. They said that they had a job as a security guard at the time, and before that shit show fell apart, and that they had a girlfriend and everything else. Both of them, as far as I'm aware, are like me. They're both trans women. And so I said, okay, alright, it looks like she took some time to grow up and stuff, and let's go ahead and play it by ear and see where it goes. So for the first 3 months, everything was pretty normal, and I was having to go and just live life, take care of myself medically, and we were kind of chugging through the Biden years a fair bit, and it wasn't too bad, I don't think. Things were considerably more stable back then, and as far as I could tell, everything was normal. And from there, it was just a question of getting to know the person that she was with at the time and everything else. So I was like, oh, okay. So she thought that I was literally solid gold at the time, and I was kind of weary of this. I've never really been much of a fan of super clingy people. I've never really been much of a fan of people being up my ass in general. And so I was very, very weary of her right off the bat. So she was actually doing somewhat, well, actually pretty goddamn well by any standard. Her ex was 27 or 28, I believe, and then she was creeping up on 25. And so she was doing really well. She had been staying at home with her parents for a while, and the stipulation was, okay, you can go ahead and stay here, but you have to bank your money. That way you can build up a savings. So she had a pretty good amount of savings saved up, and I was like, oh, that's cool. It's nice to see people actually saving some cash and stuff and giving themselves a little bit of stability. And it's actually kind of cool that, her parents are actually allowing her to go and do that. So what was going on for a while is I would join the chats and stuff, and I had noticed right off the bat that the people that they were hanging out with were actually incredibly racist. I had looked at this for a while and I said, oh my god, what is this? And they would sit there and say, well, it's just kind of funny watching, racist people be racist, and I didn't really ever find too much amusement out of any of it, really. I couldn't get any amusement from it at all, and I just thought it was really disgusting and stuff. And it was kind of interesting because in this group I met my first encounter of a African-American racist person, which was actually kind of strange. I mean, seeing a black Nazi was kind of a first for me, and then the rest of them were just standard white dudes that were going and walking around and, making asses out of themselves, as you would typically expect from people that are living in the South, per se. And so for a while, I just kind of looked at it, and I would say to myself, okay, the bar is not very high, but that is okay. You know, maybe we can go and change their minds and stuff. And so I would go and typically join the parties, and I would go and just be like, hey guys, you know, there really is no reason for that. You know, it doesn't really have a functional place in modern society. And so they would rebel against it and stuff, and, you know, they didn't really care for it too much, and I was rather disgusted by the entire thing. So I had gotten to a point where I was like, right, you know, this is just not for me. So I was about 6 or 7 months into this mess, and I just decided to leave. I was like, I'm not going to tolerate this. This is not okay. This is not what I believe American values to be. You know, even though America has a very deeply entrenched racism issue because we're kind of founded on it when you actually look at our history. So I sat there for a while, and I had split off from the group, and I had taken a few people with me, and she was one of them, as well as my ex-friend and another person that I'd met. And after that group had split, you know, we were actually doing okay. You know, the racism was gone, and everything was starting to mellow out and just, you know, get better. And so this person I was dealing with, as time went on, they would just complain about their parents. I can't do this. They don't let me have access to any of my money, yada yada. So I said, that's kind of weird. And I would sit there and I would ask her why, and she would just say, well, they want me to save. And in my mind's eye, saving's not a bad thing. You know, it gives you a fair bit of stability and stuff, and then you're also living there for free on top of it. So, you know, it's like you're essentially getting free rent. You're not having to deal with super barbaric rent rates that we typically see these days. And, you know, you're also allowed to have a pretty good chunk of savings, which for your age, you know, having around 57 grand was pretty goddamn amazing. I can't really think of too many people that actually had that in savings, especially these days. And so she would just kind of go and complain about her parents and how they were awful. And much to her credit, you know, her mom didn't really treat her that well and stuff. With her being trans, her mom was definitely leaning hard right there for a bit, and I would just kind of shake my head and be like, geez, you know, that's not really that great. So she wanted responsibility past a certain point, and she was like, I want to move out. And I was like, oh hell, here we go. And she wanted to move in with her ex because they were still dating at the time. So I said, okay. And when they moved out, I said, okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pay off your car. Just get it done, because your car payment is huge and you're going to need that money for other things, because you're going to be expected to pay bills now. You're going to have to pay for rent and phone service and just the common sense shit that you need. So we went ahead, I helped her formulate a financial plan. I said, okay, here's a list of all your bills. This is currently what you're making. You know, we're going to go ahead and take out for taxes, all that mess. And I had given her a budget. And I said, okay, as long as you stick to this, you shouldn't have issues. So after the car was paid off, she still had a good chunk of her savings intact. I think it was like 37 grand at the time. And so she was just kind of sitting there, and she wasn't really happy with her job. So I said, okay, if you're not happy with your job, go ahead and, you know, swap off to another job, you know, jump to another job, go scout around for either more work or new work, and, you know, try to at least meet what you're making, you know, at your old job before you jump to the new one, and make sure that the new one is one that is a better fit for you. So it became a point of jumping from one job to another. She transferred out from Sam's and started working at McDonald's. McDonald's lied about the pay. She took a $3 hit. I said, okay, not a problem. We can go ahead and work around this. This is not a life-ending thing. Things are going to be kind of tight. But the cool thing is you're not paying full-blown rent. You're only paying, I think at the time, like 300 of it, which is great because most people are paying upwards of like 1,100 to 1,500. You know, with higher rent, you would not be able to afford this, and then, you know, buy all the stuff you want to buy and everything else because she has a really bad spending issue. So I would continue working with her for a while, and as time went on, it was my ex-friend calling me from the truck complaining about her relationship with this other person. And I flat out told her I didn't want to be involved. And then her girlfriend, who had moved out of her parents' house, was complaining about how, you know, she wasn't happy in the relationship. And so this relationship became kind of like a vicious circle a little bit. You know, everything was just kind of going around and around a fair bit, and so nobody was really happy. Neither one of them were very content with much of anything. So my ex-friend decided that they wanted to be unemployed. They didn't like their trucking job, and they were showing some pretty gnarly narcissistic tendencies. And so they would get a job, not like it, quit it. Get another job, not like it, quit it. Get another job, not like it, quit it. And then decide to be unemployed for a while. And that was actually kind of the nail in the coffin, per se. It wasn't really getting any better. And so for almost a year and a half, my ex-friend was unemployed. And the excuse was, I want to get a job that doesn't hurt my lower back. You're sitting in a truck. Any job you do that's sit down is going to hurt your back a fair bit. Any job that you go and do that you're standing, you're probably going to have a fair bit of back pain as well. You know, the best way to take care of your lower back, strangely enough, is to work it out and provide it with proper support. I have lower back issues. I go and I work my back out all the time. It's something that has to happen, especially with me creeping up on 40. So she decided she didn't want to be employed for a while, and the burden literally came down to me, sometimes her mom, and her, of course. So they had started dipping into her savings all the time to pay for bills, and then go and buy a bunch of stuff they didn't need. Like, once she had left her parents' house, it was just pretty much straight chaos. And so she was buying up a bunch of guns that she didn't need, and then she was also having to pay everybody else's bills because she, you know, needed a place to live, and if the rent isn't covered, obviously, you know, she can't stay there. So it was a toss-up between my ex-friend, her, and then my ex-friend's grandfather. They were all sharing this disgusting-ass townhouse that was infested with mold in the basement and everything else. It was something straight up out of Resident Evil 7. And so this had gone on for a while. There was a lot of animosity, and my ex-friend, I had to let her go because she had really bad aggression issues. She would lie all the time. She would talk shit about people all the time, and it wasn't really getting any better. And I just kind of said, listen, dude, I don't want to be around people like that, you know. I remember when I was in my early 20s, I would do that all the time, and it actually took a fair bit of growing up for me to grow out of it. And I'm glad that I did. You know, I'm glad that I kind of reached that point where I was like, okay, you know, I don't need this anymore. I don't need to do it. This is great. And, you know, it was a hallmark of maturity, and I'm very grateful for it. So eventually her finances took such a hit, and her relationship eroded so hard that she wound up living with her mom again and her dad. And she didn't want to clean up after herself. She just didn't want to do anything. She was just kind of, from what I understand, living like a slob. And then her stepfather had requested at the time to not bring guns into the house. He does not like guns in the house. And, you know, okay, I get it. So she kind of railroaded this man, wasn't cleaning up after herself, and then decided that she was going to store the guns in a gun safe anyways after he had said no. And so her parents finally said, listen, you know, this is not a flop house. You haven't listened to anything that we said. You're not going to be living here forever. We're sorry that your savings are gone, but you're going to have to leave. You're going to have to go out there, find your own way and stuff. And it was actually quite wild. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and I'm telling her live within your means. And she's like, but I want to get this game and that game. And she has no real concept of anything outside of video games and TikTok, and it's really just kind of sad, you know, video games, TikTok, and socializing. And with me, I was kind of raised as extremely rough blue collar, so it's like you did whatever it took to survive and stuff, a lot of poverty meals, you know, the whole 9 yards and stuff. And so I'm explaining this to her. I'm explaining, well, you can't afford this and this, and you need to take better care of yourself, or this and this can happen. And so she eventually went ahead, landed back with her ex again, you know, got thrown out completely. And her ex decided to actually go and get a job and keep a job now that the savings had completely dried up. And so I'm kind of sitting here and I'm watching this and I'm giving sound advice. It's like, okay, well, we can, with your finances, we can make adjustments here and here, but you're not going to be able to go ahead and buy this, this, and this. This is what your food budget is looking like. You tell me you don't really eat a lot. That's great. This is what your car insurance is looking like. We would literally go and break down her bills, and I would say, as long as things don't really change too much, you should be able to start building your savings back. So I gave her a plan, a very simple plan. And it's still allotted for things like grabbing the occasional video game and stuff, maybe a bit of DLC and everything else, but all the core bills, the food and the rent and everything else was still covered. So I would go about teaching her life skills. And we would do the lessons pretty much nightly, you know, depending on how I was feeling. And eventually, over the course of 2 years, everything had just kind of fallen apart. She kind of stopped showing up for life skills lessons. She didn't want to adhere to any budget whatsoever. She was constantly complaining about how she's miserable at her job, and then, you know, like, it was just kind of going from bad to worse, and I didn't really care for that too much. And so things had eventually started to spin out of control. She had started lying compulsively all the time, and it was getting kind of ridiculous. She would lie to me about things that she didn't even really need to lie about. I would tell her, yo, man, you gotta get a grip on your finances. Oh, you know, shiny new Xbox Series X has appeared, you know, in her room when she had a functional old console. You know, like, she was literally blowing money where she didn't really need to blow it. And then with a lot of her other friends that I wound up taking with me, mind you, she would go and get combative with them. She would demean them, insult them, and then think it was funny on top of it. I personally didn't think any of this fucking shit was laughable. So I would literally go and I would look at it and I would say, okay, we got a person that lies all the time, a person that is very quickly becoming not very trustworthy, insults people that are doing better than her because the other person had literally gone and was cranking up to go to college, very proud of it, you know. And so I was like, hey man, if you want to go do it, then go do it. And she was like, well, you're going to have this and this. And then she would openly insult this child's mother because his mom did not know that he's bisexual, because she's very religious, and he kind of keeps that from her a fair bit. So it was a lot of micromanaging, and, you know, so I was literally having to go raise her, and then I was having to turn around and go and raise him on top of it, because he kind of, you know, well, he didn't kind of anything. He needs all the support he can get. I still provide him support. And then with her, she just didn't want to adhere to anything. You know, she was complaining, you know, we're not doing lessons, but I can't do lessons with you if you don't show up. And so eventually everything had just become more or less of a social call. Her finances had degraded very heavily, and then she decided to double down on things and get a cat that she could not afford. And so she couldn't afford a couple of trips to the ER that she had to go to. So I literally, past a certain point, was going and helping with the ER bill a little bit, because she couldn't afford that. And then her ex didn't know how to do taxes either, so she ran a deficit on that, and I had to go and help with that. And then when the cat got sick because, you know, nobody was taking care of the cat. It ended up at the vet with just a ton of bills, and her mom wound up going and footing that, which she later ended up going and paying her for, but, you know, she just wasn't really ready for much of anything, so everything had started to fall apart, and I was just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. I got tired of giving advice that was never adhered to. I got tired of constantly adjusting her finances for her and everything else, and explaining to her, hey, this is how you do this is what you need to do. The thing that had disturbed me the most, I think, though, is every other month it was, oh, I want to do this with my life, followed by, oh, I want to do this new thing with my life. And it wasn't really getting any better. She was having an extremely hard time going and planning for any sort of future. And then to make matters worse, as time went on, I was noticing that she has a complete and utter lack of empathy for most other people, and she doesn't have any regard for others either. You know, she just has a tendency to want what it is that she wants. Like, she even went past a certain point, knocked up another woman, and that woman was like, no, I'm just going to raise this child myself. So she has like a kid out there that she doesn't even take care of, you know. So I just kind of said, okay, alright, you know, this is what it is, I guess. And the pattern of irresponsibility just kind of kept going forward, and it had started to affect my private life a fair bit, because she would constantly scream, I'm done with my ex, I'm done with my ex, I'm done with my ex, and then proceed to go and talk to her ex while her ex would go and give her grief, go talk shit about everybody, and then she would regurgitate that into the group with me and the other people, and it would start to poison the group past a certain point, which really wasn't that great. And so is this never-ending revolving circle, more or less, where we're all just kind of moving around and around again. And so it had become a full-blown cycle past a certain point, and I was kind of looking at everything, and she was complaining that she was broke. I can't afford this, I can't afford that, and so I was literally having to go and constantly take time out of my day to help her adjust, because she is extremely codependent. And there was a specific point where I had sat down and I said, hey, listen, I'm not going to be alive forever. My body's falling apart. You need to figure this shit out. And I was so aggravated with it, because with codependent people, I feel like if you give them an inch, they'll go ahead and take a mile. And so I went ahead and I was like, you need to learn to be alone. That is how that is. You need to learn to be alone. I am alone all the time. I'm not bothered by it. I get a little bit lonely sometimes, but I still do it. I still get up and, you know, I handle my life and everything else. And, you know, I'm still very much so a free human being in that regard. I'm very much so an island. You know, I don't need somebody else to literally go and handle all of my stuff, unless maybe I'm having a hard time reading something, you know, because my vision's pretty much non-existent at this point with, like, all the issues with my eyes and shit. But outside of that, I typically don't need others. I have a tendency to go and figure it out myself, and that's pretty much it. So the lying habit was getting worse. The shit-talking habit was getting worse. The way that she was mistreating other people was getting way worse. She was having a hard time just functioning in general. And she couldn't, like, with her finances, that shit was falling apart hard, and she's like, well, I don't know what's going on, but she would constantly buy things that she didn't need. And it's like, okay, well, you did not need all this extra clothing. You know, you still have clothes that are fine and functional. You're not making a lot of money. This is something that you're going to have to weather a fair bit. And she just would kind of throw it into the wind and go from there. So eventually the full-scale breakup with her and my ex-friend had finally hit, and my ex-friend was still in denial about it. She was like, oh, well, you know, we're still together and we'll fix it. And it's like, listen, dude, the relationship's fucked. There's no fixing it. And so it had finally sunk in, and immediately this woman was like, oh, I want to start dating immediately. Like, she instantly had gravitated towards sex. And I sat down and I was like, hey man, why don't you go ahead and give yourself some time to recuperate? You know, like, just take time to recuperate, you know, so you're not struggling with it. And so she's like, well, you know, I need, you know, to have my needs met. Well, it was actually a lot more colorful than that, but, you know, YouTube and all that. So she was more worried about getting her needs met, so she was latching on to whoever the hell more or less would have her, and it wasn't really that great. And this would eventually fuck up the friendship that we had because she wasn't really capable of thinking of other people, only herself. So I kind of sat down past a certain point, and I said to myself, this is not great. So she would go in the chat, and she would drag people in, and they were all sketchy people. One of them was like a guy that was like a green fox fursuiter. And his big thing was, I like to get drunk and high all the time, but, you know, when we looked into him and stuff, I was like, honey, you don't make good decisions. And she's like, why? I said, well, this guy's arrest records have him being listed for pedophilia. And she was like, really? I was like, yeah, it's right here, dude. You know, you can go ahead and research that. And so he got mad because I was, at the time, even with me having my significant other, I was going through that phase in Arizona where a lot of furries were being busted as pedos, and so we were having a conversation about it. The guy didn't like it, tried to list it off as some sort of bigoted crap when I was talking about the experiences that I have here in Arizona with the fursuiting community and how most of them have a tendency to do incredibly skeezy shit. So he didn't like that. He fucked off, and she would continue to go and piss and moan about how she's single and lonely and horny and all this other shit. And so I would continue giving her advice. I'd be like, hey, hon, just get your life in order. That's all you gotta do. Just take time out, get your life in order, and get to where you need to be, you know. And she proceeded to do everything but. So she was complaining, oh, this is hard, that's hard, and me and the other person in the friend group were just kind of looking at each other going, she's doing this to herself. So eventually me and the other friend would go and we would have side conversations with him starting school and stuff. You know, he was really nervous about college, and I said, listen man, you're gonna do fine, you know. I think that you've got all this in the bag. You know, you're gonna have to work hard, but I think you can get through it. If you need a hand with anything, let me know. I'm always here. And so she was getting upset because I was like, this is how you make school accessible. You don't have to do school all in one run. You know, you can take it online, you can show up and do it on campus. There's just so many ways you can do school. You don't have to do it all in a single stint. You know, you can literally go and do it piecemeal. There's just so many different ways to actually go about doing college these days, and so we were going through it, and her reception of it was very negative. And so this would become the norm. And so she would, past a certain point, things were actually getting worse. I was trying to go and do the content batch for 2025, and I was already nervous with the, you know, elections coming up and everything else, you know, and how fucked those are going to be, because I already know who people are going to vote for, you know, because of how the United States of America is. And so I went ahead and I was trying to wrap up the content batch. I was doing mailbag videos and games and just compilations, just all kinds of crap. I think I had at the time in between 6 to 8 projects stapled to me at any given moment that I was just kind of going and constantly rendering and then storing after I figured out it was like in working order or not. And I was very, very busy. So what would happen is, typically anybody that knows me knows that after 7 o'clock I'm typically free. All my medical stuff is done, I'm done scheduling appointments, I'm done with medication management, things like that. After 7, everything's done. Technically speaking, I'm done after 6, but I like time to decompress, especially if I have to travel for appointments. You know, 7 is just kind of 7 forward are kind of the golden hours for me. So what would happen is, since she was bored at work going and working at McDonald's, she would call me throughout the day. And I would be like, "Hi honey, how are you doing?" And she'd be like, "I'm bored." And I was like, "Okay, well, and I would talk to her for a little bit. And then I would be like, "I gotta go. I will see you when I get home. Yeah, I'll see you after 7, more or less." She would say, "Okay, call me back 35 minutes later. Talk a little bit more. I'm bored." And I would sit there and say, "Okay, well, I have to go, and I will see you when you get home." And so the amount of disrespect had become routine. The disrespect was getting kind of ridiculous. I typically asked people to get a hold of me in the evening hours. It was like noon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. Like, it was just kind of this never-ending thing. And I was getting pretty fed up with it because it was impacting my medical life. I was having an issue going and trying to get care established. So many issues I think that I was having at the time. I was moving around and migrating between rheumatologists and just trying to get specialists for all the issues that I have, had become a hardcore chore. It was also getting to the point where on Wednesdays when I would go to therapy, she would also call my phone then. And obviously with my therapist on the horn and stuff, I'm not going to sit there and be like, "Oh, hold on, I have to answer this call." It's just very disrespectful to this woman's time and effort, because she gives me an hour of her life to help me patch up my stuff so I can go and try to do my best, and that needs to be respected, I think. So past a certain point, it was a combination of constant lying, constant calling, constant insults, constant disrespect, just pretty much everything. And me and the other person were talking about it, and there was a point where this woman had gone fishing, and we had like an evening, me and the other person to ourselves, and the chat was quiet. And then we both discovered how relaxing it was. Like, it was bad. Like, we were sitting down and he was like, "Hey, Raime." And I was like, "Yeah, sweetie." And he was like, "I am so relaxed right now." And I was like, "Thank fuck, I thought I was the only one. I didn't want to feel bad about it, So we were kind of going and talking back and forth about how nice it was to actually be able to relax without having TikTok in the background and her complaining in the background, and just this smorgasbord of her always trying to get laid and doing stupid shit and bitching about her ex. And like, we had experienced, neither one of us had experienced peace in so damn long that we forgot what the hell it looked like. And so past a certain point, we kind of felt that the respect was gone. It wasn't really getting any better. The lying habit, past a certain point, she wasn't even like making the effort to try to cover it up. It was very easy to see that the lies were fully there, and very easy to debunk and everything else. And it wasn't getting better, it was only getting worse. And so she would try to, past this point, go and latch onto relationship after relationship. And I would tell her, "You need to give yourself time to like actually go and heal." And she would say, "Well, this person's kinky too, and they want to start a relationship." And I'm just kind of sitting here saying to myself, okay, there's a lot of red flags attached to what you're doing and stuff. This is not okay. The person you're trying to go and shack up with has a lot of red flags. They're not okay either. And I would stop sugarcoating things past a certain point. I would kind of sit down and say, "Okay, all right, you're old enough. The training wheels come off. We're going to stop making this fuzzy. We're going to stop sugarcoating it. And, yeah, you're old enough to get your fucking teeth taken out every time you do something stupid." So I would literally take the filter off my mouth, and I would say, "Hey, this is how this is. You chase red flags like it's going out of style. Me and Sandy are both just tired of staring at it. We're tired of watching you implode. We're tired of the lies, the bullshit, the sneaking around. We are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Every time you go and you show up to a chat, it's you kind of brainlessly drooling over TikTok, not really interacting with the people that you have invited to the chat. That's disrespectful of their time, you know. I just kind of went the whole 9 yards with it, and I was like, hey, this needs to improve. If it can't improve, you don't have anything. You know, and it was just this, constant level of malfunction that I just had gotten sick and tired of being sick and tired of. She would complain that I had stopped teaching her things, but she would never show up to lessons. She would complain that she's broke, but she would never really adhere to the financial ledger that I gave her, where everything was actually sustainable. You know, it was literally just the same problem that I see with a lot of Gen Z. And I just would go and I would stare at her and just kind of shake my head a fair bit. You know, just shake my head in disapproval, you know. And so it had gotten worse, and I had explained to her, I said, hey, you have this friend, you know, he gives you his time, his energy, his effort, and all you do is insult him, his mom, and then you just kind of slobber all over TikTok. I was like, have you tried unplugging your head from social media's ass? And she didn't really like that. I was like, dude, you know, he shows up all the time wanting to play games with you after he's done with his coursework. And this is how you treat him, you disrespect him. And then you insult his mom on top of it. And I was like, you know, that's not really that great, you know. And I would explain to her multiple times, mind you, that yes, this child's mother does have issues because she is damaged from trauma. What she is doing is not okay. You do not need to be an asshole about it. So past a certain point, the problems had spiraled so far out of control that she was calling my phone like 4 or 5 times a day. While working, mind you, like she was supposed to be working the front counter at McDonald's, taking orders and stuff and giving people their food. And I found that, so I use my phone primarily for appointment scheduling and other vital communications. I do not socialize on it. I do not talk to people on the phone that often. I do not text people. Most of the time, if people want to talk to me, they have to get into a chat on Discord or an Xbox Live Party. And so I just kind of sat there and I said, okay, you know, I cannot be doing this. I went ahead and I review, every now and then, I review how much time I've spent on the phone with various people. Because it felt like the days were getting shorter, and I couldn't really explain it very well. I was kind of sitting back saying, God damn, the day fucking flew, you know? Why do I feel like I just don't have enough time? Because normally I'm able to allocate time properly. So I went into the phone app and I looked at all the contacts, and over the course of 2 weeks, I think we had a 20-hour call log. And I said, Jesus fucking Christ, that's way too much. You know, and it wasn't, so like the main issue was, it wasn't just calling on the phone. I was literally expected to spend time with her on the phone, then when she comes home, transfer over to an Xbox Live Party, and then spend the evening with her, and I would just kind of say, okay, I can't fucking do this. It's nothing personal, it's just I have shit to do during the day. So I had gotten to a specific point because she was doing this with my other friend as well, when he was supposed to be in school, mind you, or working on homework, trying to get things done because college is literally no joke. And so finally we were both like, hey, we can't do this. We are busy. We have lives that do not revolve around video games and socializing and social media, you know. Raime's busy, I'm busy, you know, and we just kind of had to nip it in the bud. And I was like, from now on, during the day, if it's anything before 7, it is simply going to be ignored. Because I was falling behind on appointments, I was falling behind on scheduling, I was falling behind on pretty much everything that I needed to accomplish to go and get my health to a better state. And so I can't go and call people and fix various issues when I have somebody literally going and calling my phone each and every day, multiple times a day. It just wasn't really, it wasn't working, it wasn't functional. And so she had gotten kind of upset a little bit. And I could tell that she was upset, even though she tried to lie to me about it. She's like, oh, that's fine, but she just had like this resting bitch tone. And so I'm just like, too bad, so sad. And I went ahead and I dipped. So things had started after me and my other friend had put our feet down, more or less. The entire dynamic had changed. Her neediness was getting kind of fucking ridiculous, and it wasn't really, there was no saving it, more or less. I was just kind of sitting down going, okay. She always has problems. She's not really looking for any sort of solutions, and then with her starting HRT, she shouldn't be drinking because alcohol can cause a dearth in estrogen, and with her body not producing more of it, that can lead to a deficit. So she got in the habit of drinking every time that she was depressed or living on social media. Like, it had degraded to such a point that I was like, I just don't want to watch this person implode. I'm tired of saving them 24/7. And it literally, I had looked back and I had said to myself, I've been doing this almost 3 fucking years. I cannot keep doing this. I am not their parent, And they're not a child, which is another thing. They're a grown-ass adult. They're more than capable of, experiencing consequences for dumb things they do. So me and my other friend had talked about it, and he was experiencing some life dramas. He had never gone to court before. And so we were sitting down, and I was trying to prep him for it, talking about honorifics, how to compose yourself in a courtroom, things like that. And she wouldn't stop messaging me. We were both sitting in a locked chat. And I was just trying to go and teach him how to do this, how to dress, how to compose yourself, how to manage anxiety in a courtroom. How to go and keep yourself groomed, how to address the judge, what to talk about, what not to talk about, speak when spoken to, all that shit, and because he's very nervous about it. And he's still going to be doing it later on in the year and stuff, but it's important to manage his lessons now, that way it's not a problem later. So, nothing had really changed. She kind of stayed on the same hamster wheel, still talking with the ex and stuff, and complaining about various aspects and all this other shit, and it wasn't really going anywhere. No change was being achieved after I said, hey, if you're tired of dealing with it, just cut them off. That's all you gotta do, just cut them off. And between me falling behind in my medical life, my personal life a fair bit, content creation, just everything, trying to cater to this person and their damn problems, I was pretty much done. I went ahead, I handled everything with my friend. We got the courtroom lesson out of the way, and I called her back. And she had started interrogating me about it, and I was like, yeah, dude, I'm not going to sugarcoat this shit. We're working on that. The final straw that had broken the camel's back throughout the relentless shit show that was the friendship that I had with her was she had brought this alleged other trans person into a chat one night, completely blindsided me because I was just going and working on something at that point. I had no idea who the hell this person was. I didn't know what the hell it was that they wanted, never seen him before, and it was really, really weird for me. So they had come in in a very flamboyant gay tone. They were like, oh, can I be here? And I was like, yeah, man, I don't give a shit, Just be good to yourselves and each other, and we should get along quite alright, just fine, no bells and whistles. And it was really just fucking awful from start to finish. So when I do chats, I like to be hands-free. I don't actually like to have headphones or earbuds in. Like, earbuds are okay if I'm on the go. Like, if I'm in a vehicle or if I'm in public, obviously I'm going to be wearing earbuds, but when I'm at home, I hook up everything via Bluetooth, and I have it kind of going through a speaker, and then since I like to be hands-free and I don't always like to be on the Xbox, I have my phone plugged in, and my phone's mic is super sensitive, so I can be on the other side of the room working on something and not really have to worry about people in the chat not hearing me. And it also works for Discord as well. It allows me to be extremely versatile with how I go about talking to people while going about getting everything done. So remember this because it's going to be important moving forward. I went ahead and the other person was, this person that had popped into the chat was very, very obnoxious right off the bat. It was very evident that they had identity problems right off the bat, because first they were like, oh, I'm non-binary, then they're like, oh, you know, I'm trans femme, oh, you know, refer to me as she, oh, refer to me as they. It was just really, really oddball, and I'm sitting here trying to work on this project in the background, and it was just this relentless onslaught of things that they wanted and everything else. And so past a certain point, we were talking about the election and how much I cannot stand Donald Trump because he's sleazy and slimy and just, you know, I've never really been much of a fan of neo-fascists, ever, at all. And so every time I would refer to Donald Trump, you know, this person would go and recoil and start having a panic attack, and, you know, she would go and baby this random person, are you okay, hon, are you okay? And I'm just sitting here saying to myself, what the fuck is going on? So I had to literally put my foot down and be like, okay, you do understand that nobody is talking about you, correct? And when I had said that, the panicking still kind of kept going on. I was just kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired. So I went ahead, and past a certain point, they had gone to bed, and I was like, you know, thank fuck. But all the way up to the point of them going to bed was a straight fucking shit show. So after they had stopped panicking about me saying he in the party, which was very fucking strange, we were going, and I had my godkids walking in and out of the room. They had stopped by to visit and stuff, and I was like, hey man, you know, we've got food in the fridge, yada yada yada. This person was fully aware that, you know, I had kids literally walking in and out of the room, and then this random person, as well as my ex-friend, literally had started getting hypersexual with everything. You know, she was going and taking like leads and shit and sending it over to this other random fuck that had joined the chat, and, you know, the other person was just moaning really loudly, and they were trying to claim that there was like a whole smorgasbord of shit that was wrong with this chat in general. First they were trying to claim that they have DID. I said, huh, and then they were trying to say, well, I got it from my dad. And I just kind of said, well, you know, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, it doesn't have a genetic component, it's environmental. You have to have the dog shit abused out of you before you know, start developing it. And then, even then, you know, you're not really aware of it for a while. God knows I wasn't for, oh man, years and years and years, until I ended up in the ER and they were ever so nice enough to go and explain, hey, you have this, and then I was in denial about it for a while, which I still kind of am to a certain extent, because I just don't have memory of much of anything. It kind of freaks me out a bit. But they would go and claim, oh hey, I have DID, I got it from my dad. I would realize very quickly, oh, you know, well, it has no genetic component, so they would kind of sell this story of, my dad has DID, and so I have DID, and I'm just kind of like, no, goober, that's not how the hell we do this shit. And then other oddities were kind of going on as well. My ex-friend would go and mail this random person via Discord lewds, and they would like moan loudly into the mic, and then they were like, well, I can't help the moan, you know, it's a tick. And, you know, sorry, but no, you know, it's not a fucking tick, shut up please. And I was just getting really, really incredibly fucking pissed with shit. And so my godkid had walked into the room, and we were mid-sweeping this shit, mind you. And so I had kindly asked, I was like, hey, you know, can you not do that please? I have a kid in the room. I was completely railroaded. It was not taken into consideration whatsoever. And they just kind of kept doing it. So eventually I said, enough's enough. And I had left the chat, because I do not want my godkids to be exposed to that kind of crap that's being powered by fucking raw stupidity. So I just said, yeah, we're not fucking doing this. And so I had pulled my soon-to-be ex-friend to the side, and I said, hey, we can't be doing this. And I was told, oh, well, I'll talk to her. And I was like, nah. In the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, nah, man, you're not going to do jack shit. You're not going to band-aid it. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to try to appease this person because you're already trying to get down, you know, their pants and stuff. Like, I was able to go and see that really early on, and I wasn't impressed by any of it. Because she has this habit with pretty much all her relationships. Oh, it's a new friendship, and then, you know, it kind of devolves into sex and self-loathing a fair bit later. Because she's not capable of functioning in a healthy relationship, it always winds up crashing and burning because she always chases the red flags. So I'd explained this to her. I said, right, DID is not genetic. You know, at least from what I was told when I was diagnosed, it's mainly an environmental thing like BPD, although BPD can sometimes have, I guess, phenotyping for it, but it's not common. It's incredibly fucking rare. And so I had explained, I was like, hey, moaning is not a tick. You know, DID is not something you get from your genetics. Like, I had pointed out all the bullshit. And so the following day, I found myself in a chat with this person again. I'm just kind of sitting there saying to myself, yeah, this is... they're not getting around to. I had decided very early on that I was going to stomp that shit out because I realized that if I didn't, it was going to be a fucking shit show. And with me trying to go and take care of people and everything else, I just do not need the fucking peanut gallery going and, you know, moaning loudly into the fucking party while making excuses for it the entire time. They had started up real quick. They were in there less than 30 seconds, and I was like, hey, listen, I know that you think that this shit's probably cute. It's not. And I had shut it down. They had gotten upset, and they were like, oh, well, I'm going to leave. And I was like, yep, you do that, and that was pretty much it, you know. And so I had brought this up to my ex-friend and stuff, and I was like, hey man, we can't be doing this, this is not okay. And so they had started, since they are lonely now, they had started to try to go and pander to it. Well, they're abused, and they weren't like this, and I was like, yeah, Luna, they're violating your boundaries. We've explained to this brainless fuck that you're in recovery and you're trying to learn to be okay by yourself. And the only thing that you're doing is literally baiting them for sexual attention while they railroad your boundaries while you're trying to be single, trying to get down your pants. And they're disrespecting everybody else. So she was like, well, I don't know. And like, you can always tell easily when she knew that she was fucked because she would sit there and say, I don't know. No, you do know, you just don't want to go and have a coherent answer for it, so you kind of wave your arms around and you kind of quit because you know that there is no good excuse for the shit that you're pulling. So I sat down and I had left the chat, and I was kind of sick and tired of being sick and tired, and, you know, I got tired of all the lies and the bullshit and just everything else, and, you know, I realized I'm getting older, I don't have a tolerance for this crap anymore. So I sat down with my other friend, and I was like, hey, is it time to leave? Like, I just kind of sat down, I was like, is it time to fucking go? More or less. And he's like, I'm sick of it. I explained the entire situation because he was not there for any of it. He was off working on papers, and he had just gotten into a fucking car wreck, and we're trying to wade through all this shit, and he's involved with the police and everything else, their entire process, and we're reading paperwork together and everything else. I'm having to have him read off certain pieces of it because the text is so fucked up in my vision that I can't even read it correctly. It was just this constant back and forth, and this hodgepodge of bullshit trying to make it work more or less. And we had decided past a certain point that we were done being disrespected. So I had typed out a rather lengthy letter explaining the various discrepancies, why it wasn't working, and what was going to happen moving forward. I literally cut all support for her, and I said, yeah, I'm done. you know, and I'm moving on, and Sandy's going to be mailing a letter shortly. And so Sandy decided very, very quickly that he was going to go and send her a party invite to talk about these things. And the entire time she didn't really care. It was the I'm going to be a selfish fuck being a selfish fuck mentality. And it wasn't really getting any better. She was like, well, I want another chance. And Sandy was like, maybe if you get it together. But, you know, with her having a track record of not getting shit done, you know, with almost a complete and total failure rate, it really just was not, no, it wasn't going to happen. So what wound up happening was I sat down and I said, okay, listen, dude, this is what you have going on with you. Okay, you need to work on this. If you do not work on this, you will have nothing. And so the following day, I went ahead and temporarily added her back as a friend. The following day, she goes and she's sitting here sending me an invite. I go and I talk to her. And I explain it, and she starts making excuses for this slimy fucker's behavior. And I'm just sitting here going, okay. So I wanted to go and clear the air. And I was like, okay, we're gonna go ahead and fucking do this. And I had pointed out, like, all the fucking issues. And I said, right, let's go ahead and send the other fucker an invite. And see, you know, what it is that we can do to try to patch up this fucking shithole mess that they have made for us. So first I was told, oh, they're in a match on Apex. And I said, okay. So I waited and waited, 36 minutes passed. And I said, are they going to get on or not? I have shit to do. Because, you know, I actually have a life that's outside of video games and working at McDonald's. Well, they didn't want to, so they went to bed. And I said, okay, that's rude. And so I kind of sat down and I said, right, everything's done. Thank you for wasting 36 minutes of my life. And I said, fuck it, and I winged her ass out in the street. She didn't even say goodnight, she just got really fucking quiet. And I fucking left because I was so fucking frustrated dealing with fucking Gen Z and its goddamn brain damage that I was like, yeah, this is getting kind of out of hand. So I sat there and I cut her off from everything. And it was incredibly skeezy because we have this random fuck that's literally going and creating all these issues right out of the fucking gate. You know, hasn't even been here 5 minutes, mind you. Going and creating issues, and then you have a codependent person going and trying to humor it because, oh, being scary is alone, and I may potentially be able to go and get a relationship, and I'm probably going to fuck up out of this. And it was just incredibly skeezy going and watching a human being go and being fully aware that the other human being is doing something wrong, realizing that they don't respect anybody's boundaries, they don't respect anybody else in general. You know, they literally just have no courtesy for anybody else, going and choosing to defend them, saying, oh, they're hypersexual because they're depressed and they have this and that. It was just like this whole entire fucking list of shit that she was going and trying to defend this poor bastard with. That doesn't work with me, primarily because there is no excuse. I do not give a fuck who the hell the person is. If you're doing sexual shit and I say, hey, try to reel it in, there's a child that's in and out, and you go out of your way to disrespect pretty much any request that I make that revolves around kids, I will not respect you as a human being. It had gotten even worse, you know, like I was sitting there and talking about, because my arms, well, my limbs are very lanky in general, you know, I had made the joke, I was like, yeah, if you catch me in the woods, you know, with me being a little under 7 foot and having lanky limbs, and I could easily be mistaken for a cryptid. And they were literally sitting there saying, oh, well, that's great because I'm a monster fucker. And I'm just sitting there going, what? And my significant other heard that. She was pissed. And I was just kind of sitting there going, yeah, that's a bit out of line, because me and my significant other have been kind of courting for a while now, and we've been very, very happy with each other. So I'm kind of sitting here going and doing my thing, you know, and I'm kind of like going back and forth with it, and it was just a complete and utter lack of respect, you know. It wasn't really getting any better. So at the end of the day, my ex-friend made her choice. I was like, right, you can either get your shit together, or me and Sandy can leave. She chose to gravitate to the sketchy fucker instead, that does suggestive shit around kids and then tries to do sexual advancements towards people that are already taken. And finally I was like, yeah, you're fucking dumb, dude. And so it really, past a certain point, I said, I really just need a mass purge. So anybody that was doing some sketchy shit or was supporting somebody that was doing halfway sketchy shit, they were more or less just gone, and I didn't want to deal with it. You know, like, I find that people these days have a fair bit of mental impairments where they think that this shit's okay. I'm sorry, Goober, nobody really gives a shit if, you know, you think that being a pedophile should be a valid sexual orientation. It's not. Hate to break it to you. But, you know, it had just gotten so fucking ridiculous. I was like, okay, you know, literally wants to go and validate that shit, you're out of here. Oh, violating people's boundaries, trying to stand up for that shit, yeah, you're fucking out of here too. Oh, you know, like, I went down the fucking list and everything was more or less a male. And so it had left me with only 2 people. And the weird thing is I'm perfectly satisfied with that. I'm satisfied with only having 2 people, because both people have been solid gold for a while now. And looking back at it now, the amount of disrespect that she had literally shown everybody was just fucking ridiculous. And unfortunately, I see that as a habit with younger generations. Like, they try to go and validate it, but what they don't realize is there is no validation for it. You know, there's nothing that you're going to be able to say where you're like, oh, okay, you know, it's okay, everything's fine, because it's not. You know, doing slimy shit around kids, that's not okay. Defending people doing slimy shit around kids, also not okay. Going and trying to validate somebody that violated your boundaries, not okay. Chasing red flags all the time and expecting everybody else to want to watch you implode over and over again, also not okay. It had just gone on and on and on, and finally, you know, after 3 years, I was like, right, we're done. So between trying to go and defend slimy behavior and everything else, it just really, there was no, there just was no recourse at all. It was not great, you know. It literally, we did not want to sit down and watch her just self-destruct over and over and over again. It's a waste of everyone's time. It hurts to watch, you know. And we had explained this to her until we were blue in the face, over and over and over again. We literally just kind of sat there and said, okay, this is not okay. You need to take steps to remedy it. And then, you know, that was pretty much it. You know, so I flat out told her, because before I left, I was like, hey, you need to have an honest conversation with your therapist, because I'm pretty fucking sure that you're lying to her about a bunch of shit, given your track record of how you can't stop lying to people. And you need to tell her, be like, hey, I have really, really bad judgment issues in my personal life, and it is literally wrecking and shitting on every single friendship I have. And, you know, try to get treatment for that, and, you know, she made excuses for it. She was like, well, if I go to therapy, it's going to be scary. And it's like, well, yeah, you're going to have to look at yourself. And looking at yourself is a very, very scary thing sometimes. You know, it's just kind of hard for me to look at myself, because I'm just packing that much ugly. But all jokes aside, I had explained this to her, and she just routinely, time and time again, just made excuses, kind of just continued this constant pattern of failure. And I was just like, nah, dude, this is not healthy. There is nothing healthy about any of this, and we're not going to tolerate it, more or less. So, pretty much everybody short of this sketchy fuck more or less abandoned her past a certain point. Her relationship had failed. Pretty much the only 2 people that were taking care of her and gave a shit about her more or less had to get up and leave because we got tired of looking at the constant implosions. I got tired of hearing about how she was drinking and how she felt she needed to go and get dick 24/7. It was very fucking boring for me. And I didn't want to be around somebody that didn't want to go and take care of their mental health, did not want to advance the wheel. I just really looked at everything past a certain point and said to myself, Jesus fucking Christ, this is a waste of my goddamn time. And I hate that. I hate because I don't have a lot of time. Between everything that's going on and, trying to take care of people and everything else, I don't have a ton of time that I can just go and waste. So I was like, yeah, I never want to do this again. You're not getting a second or a third chance. I've never met anybody in my life that has ever gotten a second chance out of me and managed to fuck it up over the course of a half hour. You really have to go and be a special type of stupid to actually go and do that. You really have to. And so it just really, it really sucks, I think. It really, really sucks. But I wound up shaking up my entire social existence because after this I had realized there's not too many people in my life that I know that aren't doing some sort of skeezy shit. So I kind of past a certain point stopped trusting people. Oh wow. The fatigue is creeping on me. But I had stopped trusting people in their entirety. I had stopped trusting their motivations and stuff because I see this shit so often that it's really not that great. So you kind of sit back and you're like, oh, this is not okay, this is not okay, and you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, I think. But the choice was for the best. She's already crashing and burning. She's already got the flag in her hand and she's trying to bullshit herself well enough to actually go and believe that it was the right decision. So I'm just kind of, me and my other friend are just kind of sitting there and we're looking at her from a distance and we're just kind of watching her light herself ablaze. And, I gave her all the tools that she had needed to succeed in life. She just routinely failed to use any of them. She wanted to go and do everything but, and I'm not going to constantly pound on somebody's door for the sake of, trying to get them to improve themselves when that is something that they should most likely be doing by default. So yeah, that's pretty much, for those that have kept mailing me about it, that's pretty much what happened. And I mean, there's a much longer version of it, but this shit would be like fucking 3-4 hours long, and I really just don't want that. That is not okay whatsoever. And so that is going to wrap up this version of Mailbag. This is not going to be a standard volume like all the other ones. It's just going to be this quick one shot to say, hey, this is what's going on. You can stop mailing me now. That way people can just stop worrying about it. So for all those that came out, as per usual, thank you so much. And as always, I'll see you next time. And please, by all means, be good to yourselves and each other.